Team Chrome!
Hello everybody, welcome back to Team Chrome. My name is Nalo, and today we're going to be taking a look at a very special tech that is currently being played in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame, that being Eradicator Epidemic Virus. This is the very first episode of Top of the Techs. This is a series where I look at techs that are currently being played in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame, or just different spicy techs that I might find on my own and want to implement into my deck. I give an initial look through at the tech and my expectations of how it's going to perform. Then I will actually go and physically compete at a locals using the tech in my deck. And after that, we'll loop back around and talk about if the tech actually performed as good as I thought it would, or if it didn't perform very good at all. This episode is Eradicator Epidemic Virus, so as you can see, brand new, freshly shipped copy of this card here. I've never played this card before, but it is very popular in the current Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame, so I've heard a bit about the strategy that you're going for with this card. And obviously, I'm going to be playing this tech in my Tearlaments deck. We will be main decking the one copy of Eradicator Epidemic Virus because you're able to get the card activated through your mainline combo. Alright, so let's talk about this card, Eradicator Epidemic Virus. Obviously this card is really good against Mystic Mind because it doesn't let them basically play at all. They will never be able to get Mind to stick to the field thanks to this card, and any of the further power spells that they have will not be able to be used either. So the main deck that this is really going to shut out is going to be Mystic Mind decks. But this card is also surprisingly useful against many other decks. So many decks are playing power spells right now, especially stuff like Dark Ruler No More. This card protects you completely from Dark Ruler No More, which is extremely nice. This stops your opponent from using a lot of draw cards as well, like for example Pot of Prosperity. This card is very good at stopping Flunder from getting a lot of advantage off of stuff like Map and Advent, and Unexplored Winds. This card's decent against Sprite. It's not the best, but it can definitely stop them from using stuff like Starter, Gamma Burst, and Smashers, which kind of makes their jet plays a little bit more useless. So this can definitely help against Sprite, but it's probably not something I'm going to be going for the full 9 yards play into when I'm facing Sprite. Against Tearlaments, you can shut down their Perloreno and Super Polys and stuff like that. And in general, this card gives you hand knowledge, which is really nice. This card definitely has some cons though. I think the attributing one dark monster with 2500 or more attack is actually kind of a big cost to ask for. This card tributes as cost, not as effect, so you won't be able to get anything off of attributing a Tearlament. But usually the effect of this card is enough to counterbalance that. Furthermore, the mainline combo to get this in the graveyard is actually kind of hefty. So normally obviously I'm going to be wanting to mill this or hard open it, but if I absolutely need it and I can't find it, I can just send it off of Curious. Overall, I think this card is probably going to perform at around an 8 out of 10 level. I think that the cost is kind of high and it might not come up as much as I'm thinking it will, but it has a very powerful effect and can definitely do a lot in the right circumstance. So we'll see what happens at the tournament. Well boys, we are back from locals. Here is the battle-tested card, Eradicator Epidemic Virus. So let's get into the locals report. Let's talk about my thoughts on Eradicator Epidemic Virus and the locals as a whole. So our record ended up being 2-3, so definitely not the best. However, this time around I can definitely attribute that to just having some really strong opponents in the early rounds and kind of just getting blown out by some really power spells and traps that are just insanely good against my deck. Round 1, we took on Therion, and the Therion player is well known as being one of the better ones in my area. So going into game 1, we had a Winda under a Sprite Elf with a Super Poly set, so not too terrible of a board whatsoever, even against Therions. Unfortunately for us though, he did actually have evenly matched, which meant that he got rid of my board, and then he was able to kind of just build a huge board of disruptions. He kind of just top decked everything to go into a full combo, and we didn't have any good interruptions like DD Crow, for example. So that game was kind of just in the bag for him. Even though he didn't get to go into his battle phase, I just didn't have the follow-up. My hand was fairly lackluster. Game 2, we were actually able to take it. I was able to go first. Set up a pretty generic board that he wasn't able to break through. And then in Game 3, he went first and was able to, once again, set up too many disruptions, and we weren't able to build a board through it, so the game went to him. I'll spare you guys the details of round 2, but let's just say that another funny instance of evenly match occurred. We didn't even take a single game, and there was even no place for us to use Eradicator Epidemic Virus because he was playing Sprite. And like I said in the first impressions section, Sprite is not really the best deck to use this against. To make matters worse, he was on Sprite Try, and so the only thing that I was really going to be able to like stop is the Revolt. So I'm kind of sitting on a choice of I can either stop like Revolt plus other power traps, or I can stop stuff like Smashers and Starter. So yeah, EEV not really a great play there. Better to summon like Dragostapelia, for example. Round 3, we went up against Drytron Fairy, or like, I guess it's just normal Drytron. The one that summons Ultimateness, of course. This is actually the first and only time I was actually able to resolve EEV during this tournament, and it was because my hand was just insane RNG. We had so many extra resources to use, we drew into so many dangers, we even drew into EEV off of a danger, so that actually let us resolve EEV, and after resolving EEV in his draw phase, we went ahead and tributed the Dragostapelia for cost, and then we destroyed 3 spells in his hand, and that was pretty cut and dry from that point. However, the card kind of ended up being more of a win more card because our board was already insane without it. Round 4, we went up against Cyber Angel's Sprite Runic, which is a pretty cool deck. He went first game 1, and he kind of just set up a ton of interruptions. We don't really run many hand traps in the deck, so he was able to pop off and kind of just stop us from doing anything. He actually summoned 2 Heralds of the Arclights, and Tearlaments don't really do anything under that card, so that was pretty much GG. Game 2, we were able to go first, and we were able to win the game. We just set up enough interruptions. But because our Game 1 and Game 2 were pretty long, Game 3, all he had to do was go into Natasha and then just use Natasha's effect to gain life points and win off of that. So yeah, thanks Timer Rules. Going in round 5, we were 1 win and 3 losses. 5th round, we went up against Agents, and that wasn't a very hard match for us to pull off. He was pretty new to the game. EEV didn't come out throughout the whole tournament until the 3rd round, and at that point it was more of just a win more card. So that's the round report.